if I had Coke cans in packs of 6, how many cans in 5 packs? That'd be an example of a very simple proportion question. So you can watch the recording of it later, Zofia. So 5 packs of 6 cans, that's going to be, well, it's 1 pack equals 6 cans. Then 5 packs would be 5 times greater, and that'll be 30 cans. So if you want to multiply both sides by 5, that'll be one way. Now, you could be asked a follow-up question then. How many packs would I need to buy to get, let's say I want 44 cans. And I need 44 cans. So how many packs would I need to buy to get that? Well, I know that 1 pack has 6 cans. So 44 cans then. Who knows? Anybody want to have a guess at what 44 cans, how many packs I'd have to buy?
I can have a guess. 9.
Just type it in the chat if you have a guess. So we have 8s and 9s. Well, 7.3. Okay. Yeah, so you wouldn't go into a store and order half a pack or 0.3 of a pack. What does 0.3 of a pack even look like? 3/10 of 6 cans. That's going to be weird. So the logical answer is, well, I know how I would get 7 packs. 7 packs would be 42 cans, and that's not enough. I need 44 cans, because if I multiply that by 7, I multiply that by 7. So I obviously would have needed to multiply by 8 to get 8 packs. And 8 times, that's 48. Now I'd have too many cans, but that's okay. 8 times 6, so 8 packs, so I get 48 cans. But that satisfies, I get 44, at least 44. Okay, that's another example of how simple proportion could work. Now, often proportion is asked in a question that might have a recipe. So if I have a recipe and I know that my proportions for this recipe for 3 people, if I want to make this recipe, let's say I'm making a stew, and I need 200 grams of potatoes and maybe 300 grams of steak, and I need 100 grams of butter. That's it. Okay, so this wouldn't be a very nice stew, but you get the idea. That's the recipe for 3 people. But let's say I have 15 people coming over to my party. How would I adjust these recipes? Well, if there's 3 times the amount of people or 5 times the amount of people, each of these must be multiplied by 5. So I would multiply all these by 5, and that would give, and they'll all still be in proportion, but just there'd be 5 times each amount. I could ask a follow-up question then. Yeah. So yeah, be 1,000 kilograms of potatoes. What about this? If I used 900 grams of steak, how many people were at the party?
3.
Okay, I don't need the answer to this. Yes, I can. We can all work that out. A new question. If I use 900 grams of steak, how many people would have been at the party?
900. Oh, 9.
900 or 9. So 300 grams of steak fed 3 people. 300 grams feeds 3 people.
900 grams would feed 9.
Can we just stick to the chat, please? And I can see all the chat coming through. I see a lot of answers for 3. Okay. You only need to write it once as well. I'll see them. I can see them all. So if we, so this is moving on to something called the Unitary Method, which we looked at a little bit yesterday as well. So if 300 grams is 3 people, unitary, get it back to 1 person. A good thing in proportion is to figure out what 1 person, what their proportion would be of the steak. So 1 person, well, if that's dividing by 3 less, that's also dividing. So 100 grams per person. And that'd be like a rate then, 100 grams per person. So we did rates yesterday. So once I have that, I can figure out how many people are at the party, no matter what weight it is. So 900 then would be 9 times that. So there's 9 people. If I had, if I use 200 grams of steak, it'd be 2 people, and it'd be pretty obvious from that. But the key to this is a simple example, but get it back to 1 person. I'll look at a more difficult example in a second. And this is the Unitary Method. Okay. Right, next question. So let's say we say back to the cans of Coke, or just cans of Coke in general. If I found 5 cans of Coke, no longer in, not cake, you must be hungry. 5 cans of Coke cost, let's say $24. They're expensive cans of Coke. How much do 7 cans cost? Once again, if you have the answer to this, so some people got 9 in the last one, type the answer in the chat and we'll see who gets it before I do it. Okay. So if I have 5 cans of Coke cost 24, well, how much does 7 cans cost? Well, first of all, I should recognize that 7 cans is going to cost more than 5 cans. More cans, more price. That should make sense. So if I'm thinking proportionally, again, $168 seems a little bit too much more. Okay, so what I'm going to use is the Unitary Method, which is a fancy way of saying how much 1 can costs. If I know how much 1 can costs, I know, yes, Derek, brilliant. And I think Ethan has it and Julie has it as well. If I know how much 1 can costs, I can find out how much 7 cans cost. So 1 can will be 24 divided by 5. That's giving me 1 can's cost. Now I can do that on my calculator, or I can do it in my head, anyone. 24 divided by 5. So each of these cans costs $4.80. So you can do that on your calculator. That's 1 can. Once I have 1 can, the price per can, so that's now a rate, I can apply that to anything, any amount of cans. So multiply by 7 for 7 cans, multiply by 1,000,000 for 1,000,000 cans. Once I know what 1 can is, and of course, loads of you got that in the chat, 3360 when I multiply by 7. Well done. Okay, so that's an example of the Unitary Method. It's so convenient to working out the cost of, to get from 5 to 7, to get from any number to any number, bring it back down to 1. And we do this in fractions as well. Get, if we want 5/8, if we have 5/8 and we want to get 7/8, we bring it back down to 1/8 and then multiply by 7. So we don't try and go directly. We use this thing called the Unitary Method, where we go indirectly by getting the price of 1 of them. And I think that makes sense, to get the price of 1 first, and then we can work off that. All right. The final thing we want to look at today is something called inverse proportion. Now, what we did here is something called, all of this is direct proportion. Why is it direct? Well, I'll tell you. As one side gets bigger, the other side gets bigger. The more cans we buy, the higher the price. The more price it is in general. That makes sense. If we buy 10 cans, the price is going to be more expensive than if we bought 5 cans. Now for inverse proportion, if it was cans, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't make any sense. But for inverse, this would be direct. The more cans we bought, the less it would cost. So if we bought 10 cans, it would be cheaper than buying 5 cans. And that's inverse. Now that doesn't make sense with cans. But it might make sense if we've got stuff like someone building a wall. If it takes one person 10 hours to build a wall. Okay, that makes sense. The wall will take 10 hours. How long does it take 5 people? Is it going to take them 50 hours to build the wall? No, it as one goes up, the other goes down. The more people you have, the less time it'll take. So it's the opposite, and that's inverse proportion. It's going to be 5 times less this time. So if this is multiplying by 5, the opposite side is dividing by 5, inverse. So it takes 2 hours. As one goes up, so this is increasing, this one's getting smaller. Hopefully that makes sense. So direct proportion is when they both get bigger, and inverse proportion is when one gets smaller. Okay, if you have a video to disprove that, Ramsey, or you please send it on. I'm very interested in anything that can be, oh sorry, Rustam, not Ramsey. Anything that can be disproven like that. Okay, this can become more complicated when we're not given one person. So let's say it takes 3 people 24 hours to build a wall. It's always a wall. How long does it take 7 people? Once again, if you can get this one, type the answer in the chat. Okay, so I'm automatically thinking Rani's answer is wrong. Rani's put 56 in the chat. And that makes me think that you have concluded that it is direct proportion, that the more people you have, the longer it will take. I think this is inverse proportion. The more people we have, the less time it will take. Does that make sense? The more people we have, the less time it will take. Okay.
Oh, yes, sir. I have to shut up for a second.
Okay. So we need to always use unitary with proportion. It's far easier. Okay, Rustam, if you find it at some stage, email me. Okay, so one person, yes, Asher. Okay, Rani, that might have been your answer. One person is 56 hours. One person will take 3 times longer than 3 people. So it'll be 24 multiplied by 3, which is not 56. 24 multiplied by 3 is 72 hours. Okay, so it takes one person a long time to build a wall, and that makes sense. It should take 3 times as long. But then I want 7 people. Once I have 1, Derek?
It's 10, I think it's 10 point something.
10 point blah, blah, blah. Oh, no. Okay. So 7 people then is going to take 7 people, 7 times less. So dividing by 7. And we're going to get a decimal here. I will use my calculator. 72 divided by 7. What decimal will I take? Well, 10.2857. Well, let's put that in anyway. 10.2857. Okay. So 7 people take 10 and, well, not quite a half, maybe a quarter. If I wanted to round this, maybe I could do 10.3. Maybe I could do 10.29. Maybe I could do 10.286, depending on what the question would round to. It wouldn't round to 10.28. Be careful of that, Asher. And that's hours. So if it was hours, I would probably round it to the nearest full hour or half hour or maybe quarter hour. I think this would be 10 and a quarter hours. It's pretty close to 10 and a quarter hours, which is 10 hours, 15 minutes. And that's a good way to give an example of time. That's more of a time question, but 10 hours, 15 minutes or so, because 10 and a quarter hours is 10 hours, 15 minutes. But the key thing here is that you notice, before I let you go, that you notice that direct proportion, they both increase, the left side and the right side. So 1 can is $5, 2 cans is $10, 3 cans is $15. With inverse proportions, as one increases, the other decreases. So it's usually got to do with many hands make light work. So the more people that are doing something, the less time it's going to take. And that's the difference between inverse proportion and direct proportion. Both use the unitary method. And it's key here that you use your logic skills to figure out whether your answer makes sense at the end or not. So if your answer doesn't make sense, you might have multiplied instead of dividing, because it's either going to be a multiply or divide, because you're either increasing or decreasing by a multiple. Okay. Any questions besides on just the notes?